Guys, today we are going to talk about how to actually wake up at 5:30 consistently. Now, I know a lot of you guys have tried getting up very early quite frequently, and most of you guys probably have failed at some point, right? It's it is actually a very tough task, right? It's very tough it's not necessarily tough to do it for a few days, but it is tough to keep as a consistent habit. Now, I just want to kind of go over what's worked for me, kind of the tips and tricks that I've used to optimize and to kind of hack my brain a little bit, to associate waking up at 5:30 with something that's good, and to just kind of build that discipline so that I can consistently stay on track to wake up at 5:30. So yeah, I'm not really going to go over too much about the benefits of it. I'll say that for probably like another video further down the line. This is just kind of for those of you who have already made up your mind about waking up early and waking up, specifically around like 5:30. So yeah, let's jump into it. So I have my notebook with me, or my journal with me right now, just because there's so much information to go over. I think the first biggest step is to not attack too big of a goal straight on, too early in your journey. And what I mean by this is, a lot of people will, they'll start off their initial wake up time is like 10 o'clock, and all of a sudden like they feel inspired or motivated or like super pumped up to wake up at 5:30, and all of a sudden they literally try to get up at 5:30 the next day. Like they go straight from 10 o'clock wake up times to 5:30. Now, if you pause for a bit and think about this, is this really realistic, right? Assuming they haven't made any sort of even lifestyle changes, they haven't made any sort of like nightly routine changes or early morning routine changes, they just want to like straight out of the gate wake up at 5:30 with no game plan. Like, is that a good strategy? Is this working smart? I really don't think so, right? This is just nose to the grindstone, just hustle it out, and use your pure raw willpower to wake up at 5:30, right? But it's not sustainable, right? There's no strategy behind that. They're just relying on like their mind to do it, and oftentimes your mind is weak, right? So that type of person will run into a roadblock unless they're like, they have godlike willpower to go from 10 o'clock consistent wake ups to 5:30. For most of you guys, it's not sustainable. I know for me, it wasn't sustainable to do it that way, right? So what I would suggest first off is again, this is also related to the first point, but break your goals into smaller goals, right? So if you want to go from 10 to 5:30, instead of going to it, within the space of a day, right? Go into it and give yourself like a month's cushion or like a 2 months cushion, right? Because it's much better to get some small wins on your belt, no matter how small they are, as opposed to like getting it for a few days and then completely losing it and just losing all motivation and going back to your 10 o'clock wake up times. Because I've seen this with way too many of you guys, right? So start off small, break it into smaller goals. So why not just start like going to bed half an hour earlier, right? And decrease it by half an hour increments, or maybe decrease it by an hour and a half increments, right? So if you wake up consistently, usually at 10 o'clock, why not just wake up at 8:30, right? That's still an improvement. You're still moving towards your goal. It's kind of like, it's kind of like tortoise and the hare, right? You're still moving towards a goal. You just want to keep it smaller and more bite-sized so that you don't get overwhelmed, right? Which is completely logical. It's fine. And I think a lot of people don't have that patience, and you want to separate yourself from those people, and you want to separate yourself from getting trapped in that kind of loophole, right? So that's one thing you can implement. Start off smaller, basically bite-sized chunks, so that you can get some momentum going for you, and from there, slowly start increasing it more and more, right? So maybe it's 8:30 one day, the next day it's another hour and a half back, or even you could take it smaller intervals, right? You can do like half an hour, but if you want to do hour and a half, that would be what, like 6 o'clock wake up, or 7 o'clock wake up, from 8:30 to 7, right? That's an hour and a half. Something small like that, right? So you want to break your goals into smaller, more bite-sized goals. You also want to have a preset routine, right? So, just to preface, I just want to preface this by saying that your nighttime routine is often neglected for a lot of you guys, but I just want to say that your nighttime routine is like equally important, if not more important, than your morning routine, because that's setting a solid framework for you to actually wake up at 5:30. If your nighttime routine's off, like, there's no way you can wake up consistently at 5:30 for like 99% of the population out there. So what I mean by that is like, set some procedures, set some protocols. For example, like I like to sleep in hour and a half intervals. I got this from my friend Eman. And basically, like what he told me was, it takes like about an hour and a half to complete like kind of a sleep cycle for your body to complete that. So hour and a half. So either, if you're waking at 5:30, either you want to do like 10 o'clock, and by in bed I mean like in bed, like you've completed everything and you are already in bed like on the dot at 10 o'clock, or obviously 11:30, or if need be like 1 o'clock, because that gives your body enough time to complete hour and a half sleep cycles. Usually I fall in more of so if I'm in, so it's 10 o'clock, 11:30, and 1. So I usually fall in like the 11:30 area. So that's what I shoot for. So an hour before that, my routine is this, right? An hour before that, so at 10:30, I made it a hard and fast rule that all electronics have to be turned off. Like even if I'm working on something super important, I just save it. It's better for me to save it for the next morning, because I know if I don't stick to that, I just lose a bunch of discipline and I lose the motivation to keep going and wake up at 5:30, right? So turn all that off, even if it's super important. If it's a last minute email that I need to respond to, I still leave it for the next morning. Turn everything off, and then I go ahead, I take a shower. If I haven't taken a shower already, I go through like the whole nighttime routine, like brushing my teeth, washing my face, everything like that. And then I go ahead, I make myself a cup of chamomile tea just to kind of calm my nerves down, because most of the time it's been like a very, very long day and I'm still kind of like super, super wired and super like ready to go. So I need to tell my body, that's basically a cue to say like, hey, like chill out, right? So 10:30, I do all that. I go through my mini routine, and then what I do is I go ahead, meditate for like 10-15 minutes. Again, that's like around what I'm comfortable with as of now. And then I go ahead, I stretch out a little bit, and then for the remainder of the time, I go ahead, I do my affirmations, and then I do my just like a gratefulness practice, right? Like gratitude. And then after that, I go ahead, I visualize visualization comes last. But so before visualization, after meditation, I have kind of a time like 5 to 10 minutes where I just read like religious text. So an example, this would be Bible. So take that time to do that, kind of calm my nerves down once again. And then at the end, I do the visualization exercise, which is basically me in my head picturing the exact process of me waking up the next morning, right? So what that would entail is like I literally imagine myself going through the struggle, right? So it's not some happy-go-lucky like I'm just gonna pop out of bed at 5:30 and be excited for the day, because most of the time it doesn't work like that. Let's be honest with ourselves. Like when you wake up, oftentimes like your body is telling you with every instinct in your body to stay in bed because it's warm, it's comfortable. Like it's sometimes you even question what your why is. Like why are you getting out of bed and like making money like when you could be perfectly comfortable here. But you want to visualize yourself going through that struggle, but eventually being able to overcome it, and visualize the exact process, right? So if your morning routine is this, if your morning routine is get up, get a glass of water, go to the bathroom, get dressed, go through your meditations, your affirmations, your journaling session, and then hit the gym, then imagine that exact entire process, right? Because then that's muscle memory. That's building up. Like by the time you actually perform the action, your brain's like, hey, I already did this like 2,000 times in my brain, or in my mind. So like this should be relatively easy because I know the exact process that I should go through, right? It serves to strengthen that belief that you can do this, and it serves to strengthen your entire routine so that your discipline gets stronger and you know exactly what you need to do the next day, right? So that visualization, it's the best of both worlds, right? It does help me calm my mind, but it also tells me like, hey, like you are relaxing for now, which is completely fine. Have a good rest, but when that 5:30 alarm hits, you better be ready to wake up, right? And if I don't go through that, so if I don't consciously tell my mind that, hey, you need to wake up on the dot, make sure you're relaxed now, but you need to wake up on the dot at 5:30 by tomorrow morning. If I don't tell my brain that, then the chances of me actually, waking up to that alarm are much lower than what it should be, right? So having a routine and visualization are very important. Also, before bed, a few other things that I apply are, again, like turning off all electronics an hour before. Stretching is a big one, and then, like I said, tea, just any sort of like calming procedure that you could put yourself through, right? These are just some that I do right now. But you might have like 2 or 3 different more things that you apply. Just find out what works for you and apply that consistently. That's all I can say. Again, also think about, so when you wake up, you also want to think about like a step-by-step decision, right? So what I mean by a step-by-step decision is like, for example, if you are having trouble, that alarm sounds, you hit snooze and you're having trouble getting out of bed, start thinking about like a little voice in your head saying like, okay, it's fine that you're having trouble waking up at 5:30 this morning. I understand that, but at the same time, you know, why not just get out of bed for like a few seconds, crawl downstairs and like, you know, get yourself a glass of water. And if you still feel tired then, like, feel free to go back up and go to bed again, right? So again, you go downstairs, grab a glass of water, you're feeling a little better, but you're not really there yet. Then again, picture that voice in your head again saying like, hey, why not get dressed first and we'll see how you feel, and maybe do some like positive affirmations. You could do a little bit of a journaling session, and if you still feel tired after that, go back to bed. And then okay, have a coffee. If you feel tired after that, go back to bed. And at that point, all of a sudden, you know, you already have the momentum. Like, I find that generally, like, the water, getting a glass of water isn't really enough to get me over that hump. But if I stick to it and I say like, hey, like, why not like go through your morning routine and like, you know, like splash cold water in your face and like get your, like, brush your teeth and stuff like that. At that point, I'm like up. Like, I feel like if I were to go back to bed at that point, like, I would completely kill everything that I had done so far, and I hate that feeling, right? So if you can get to that point, whatever that is for you, like, fine, like, use whatever method you want. But just for me personally, I find that like having that little voice in my head tell me like, why not just do this little task, and then if you feel tired, you could go back to bed. It's like a much softer way of telling of like kind of challenging myself. Right, and that's why I feel like it works really well, because you do have the alternative of going back to bed. But hey, like, if you've done all that already and you still go back to bed, like, you'll feel terrible for doing that, right? So it's kind of like a little mind hack that I use. Again, one of the last things I want to mention before I wrap up this video is I know this is very long, but I just want to give you every single thing that I've applied so far. If it's cold in the morning, just have like a jacket or a robe or something like that, like, on your chair or something like that, like, just relatively within reach, so that, you know, when you crawl out of bed, you're not freezing cold, right? Like, I think that's pretty logical. Put it next to your bed or somewhere close, so that when you do get out of bed, you can get that piece of clothing immediately and just wrap it around yourself. Simple as that, right? I think that's we're getting close. Last thing I want to say is, or actually two things, right? So number one, no eating before bed. I make it a rule to, like, you know, sometimes my family has dinner late, and that's not really controllable, or sometimes I go out with friends, but generally, like, on a pretty consistent basis, I try not to eat anywhere from like 3 to 4 hours before bed, because especially with like high carb, high sugar foods, just because like it'll keep you up and it'll make you have a tougher time getting actually like good sleep in, right? Another thing is I make sure, again, like, electronics are turned off. Phone is on airplane mode because obviously I need it for my alarm. Airplane mode, Wi-Fi, everything turned off. Do not disturb is on, so like there's no chance that like my notifications will go off. And especially, like, I'm not tempted to like use it before bed, and also in the morning when I wake up, I won't be tempted to, you know, have that dopamine release and like check all my notifications at once, and it's like all the notifications are going off at once, and like I just get overwhelmed and I get carried away. If I allow that to happen, my entire routine just gets knocked off course, so I won't be able to complete all this stuff that I just wrote down in my notebook right here, right? Because, like, honestly, like, phone in the past historically has been one of like my biggest weaknesses in terms of like what's been holding me back from actually waking up at 5:30 and going to bed early enough to get decent sleep to prepare for that 5:30 wake up. So I make sure like phone is completely out of the question, right? If you, for example, if you have like an alarm clock, you could even like put your phone in a different room so that like you don't even see it, right? It's completely out of the question, right? Maybe that's something you can apply. For now, I don't have like a designated alarm clock, so I just have to make do with my phone, but that may be something that I'll try in the future. But other than that, yeah, that's basically all I got for you guys. I know it's kind of like a lengthier video, but I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell if you so desire. And I will see you in the next one.